Hello, everybody. We are venturing out of magnetism and into a new topic this week. The new topic is actually simple harmonic motion, waves, and sound. It's usually a very hands-on topic, but we're gonna do the best we can with what we got. So SHM, or simple harmonic motion, is any repetitive motion caused by a force acting opposite an object's displacement. That's basically the definition, and hopefully I spelled repetitive correctly. Now, you've seen this before. I assume most of you have been on a swing before. And you're on a swing, as you swing up, gravity pulls you down. And then when you swing up again, gravity pulls you back down. Your equilibrium position is your start, where you're hanging free in the center of the swing and not moving. So once you displace from that equilibrium position, gravity tries to pull you back. Another example of this would be a mass on a spring. So if you have a mass on a spring that's resting at equilibrium, and then you either pull or like stretch or compress the spring will try to push the mass back to its equilibrium position. So we are going to be focusing on the pendulum and the mass on a spring, and this is what they look like. So here is a simple pendulum, a mass hanging on a length of string that is swinging back and forth. The equilibrium position is the blue dotted line, and when it swings away from that line, gravity tries to pull it back to its equilibrium position. And here is what a mass on a spring looks like. Basically exactly what you thought it would be, a mass on a spring. So in this particular example, that is the mass at equilibrium. It's just hanging out on the spring. If I then stretch the mass away from equilibrium, the spring is now trying to pull that mass back to its initial spot. But then it goes past that spot and the spring gets compressed and tries to push it back down. So this is another form of simple harmonic motion where an object is normally at equilibrium, but when it's moved from that equilibrium position, a force acts opposite the displacement to try and pull it back to equilibrium. So let's go back and talk about our pendulum and our masses on springs. So normally in class, we would definitely be breaking up into groups at our tables and having a conversation about what kind of things would affect the period of oscillation, the time it takes for the mass to start at one place and return back to that same place, one full trip, basically. And I would love for you to think about it. You have a pendulum. What kind of things do you think might affect the period? It's basically a mass on a string, and you saw it moving. So I'd like you to think about that. And then the mass on a spring. What might affect the period of a mass on a spring? So if you feel like it, you should pause the video and maybe think for like 30 seconds. At least give it that much, because that's what we'd normally do in class. We'd create a list, and then you would be developing a testing experiment to test all these things. But we're going to do a little modified version because of current conditions. So pause the video if you want, try and think of the things that would affect the period. So I don't know if you actually paused it or not, or you just waited to see how long I would take to start talking again. But normally for the mass, for the pendulum, most people will say maybe the mass on the end of the string has an effect. Who knows? Most people also say that the length of the string might have an effect on the period of oscillation. You could simply do this on your own by taking something, putting on the end of a string, letting it swing, and then shortening or lengthening the string, and you can see right away whether or not it has an effect. Also, initial displacement from equilibrium. That is going to be in terms of an angle from equilibrium. So does the initial displacement in terms of theta make a difference? And lastly, most people miss this, but the reason that the mass goes back to equilibrium, or you on a swing go back down to the lowest point, is because of gravity. So maybe gravity has an effect? So these are 4 things that we would definitely want to investigate when it comes to a pendulum. And you would come up with these in class normally, and you would actually design all the testing experiments that we would do. Then there's the mass on the spring. I hope you thought that maybe the mass might have an effect, because it is a mass on a spring. And then some people say maybe the length of the spring or the thickness of the spring or what the spring is made of. Those are all good things. They all come together to create the spring constant. It's been a while since we've done that. We did it last with energy. But the spring constant is the letter K. Does that have an effect? Now, it was a vertical spring, so some people might think that gravity was having an effect on that spring that you saw. And actually, initial displacement might have an effect. I'm going to repeat this in the email, but the lab you're going to do doesn't specifically ask you to investigate initial displacement. Maybe you should just do that on your own and see if it has an effect. Yeah, that's about it. So what you're going to do after this video is, like, again, normally you would come up with a procedure for testing all of these things, and then we would go do them. We'd break up into groups. Certain people would take certain things, and we'd come back and discuss what our investigation found. But unfortunately, what we're going to have to do is basically a simulation or an online experiment. You're going to get really good results. And if at any point you have questions about the lab, please don't hesitate to contact me. But the lab will take you through these things. It'll help you investigate each of these things so we can develop the concepts, and then from there, develop the math. So other than that, that's your really only assignment this week, is to complete the lab and turn that in. It is a little bit lengthy, and that's it. So I hope you're all well. Hope your families are well, and you got out to enjoy this weekend's beautiful weather. Take care.